March 15th, 2019. A yellow school bus carrying 28 students from Washington State crossed into British Columbia for what was supposed to be a 3-day educational trip to Vancouver. 28 students boarded that bus. Only 27 came home. Sarah Mitchell, 16 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. Last seen at 9:47 p.m. in the lobby of the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Vancouver. Her chaperone thought she went to her room. Her roommate thought she was with a group. By the time anyone realized she was missing, 12 hours had passed. The FBI launched an international investigation. Her parents appeared on national television, begging for information. Search teams combed the city for weeks. Nothing. No body. No witnesses. No trace. For 6 years, Sarah Mitchell was a ghost. Her bedroom remained untouched. Her mother called her phone every single day, just to hear her voiceover. And then, on a humid afternoon in August 2025, a woman walked into the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. She was thin, sunburned, speaking broken English with an accent that didn't quite fit. She carried no identification, no passport, no driver's license. But when they took her fingerprints, the computer screen lit up with a match that shouldn't have been possible. Sarah Mitchell, missing since 2019. Only she didn't remember that name. She didn't remember Washington State. She didn't remember her parents or her school or the trip to Vancouver. She remembered something else entirely. A different life, a different country, a different identity. What happened to Sarah Mitchell in those 6 years? How did a 16-year-old girl from suburban Seattle end up in Mexico with no memory of who she was? And who took her? She vanished on a school trip, found alive in another country. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This is a story that will make you question everything you think you know about missing persons cases. Because the official investigation had 3 theories, and all 3 were wrong. Theory 1, Sarah ran away. She was unhappy at home, struggling with depression, and saw the school trip as an opportunity to disappear. Theory 2, she was abducted by human traffickers operating in Vancouver, a known transit point for international criminal networks. Theory 3, she met someone online, someone who groomed her, gained her trust, and convinced her to leave everything behind. But when Sarah Mitchell walked into that embassy in Mexico City, she told authorities something that made no sense. She said her name was Elena Vasquez. She said she was born in Guadalajara. She said she had been working in a textile factory for the past 4 years, living in a small apartment with 3 other women, sending money back to a family she couldn't quite remember but knew she was supposed to support. The embassy officials showed her photographs, her parents, her house, her school yearbook. She stared at them like they were pictures of strangers. When they showed her the missing person report, she broke down, not because she remembered, but because she didn't. So how does a 16-year-old American girl become a 22-year-old Mexican woman with a completely fabricated identity? Who had the resources, the knowledge, and the motivation to erase someone so completely? And most disturbing of all, if this happened to Sarah Mitchell, how many others are out there right now, living false lives with no idea who they really are? To understand how Sarah Mitchell vanished, you need to understand who she was before that March morning in 2019. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell was born on June 3, 2002, in Tacoma, Washington, to parents Robert and Jennifer Mitchell. She was their only child, born after years of fertility treatments and prayers. By all accounts, Sarah had what most would call a normal, comfortable childhood. Her father worked as an engineer at Boeing. Her mother was a high school English teacher. They lived in a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools and safe streets. Sarah was a B student, not exceptional but not struggling. She played soccer for 2 seasons before losing interest. She took piano lessons that never quite stuck. She had a small group of friends. Nothing dramatic, no major conflicts. But in the fall of 2018, something shifted. Sarah's parents noticed changes. Small things at first. She became withdrawn, spending more time in her room. Her grades slipped from B's to C's. She quit the school newspaper, something she had been passionate about since freshman year. Jennifer Mitchell, in an interview with investigators, described her daughter as distant. She used to tell me everything. Who she sat with at lunch, what happened in class, everything. But that fall, it was like talking to a stranger. She'd come home, go straight to her room, and I'd hear her on her phone for hours. The Mitchells assumed it was typical teenage behavior, the natural separation that comes with adolescence. They gave her space, trusted her judgment. That trust would haunt them for years. What they didn't know was that Sarah had started talking to someone online, someone who understood her in ways her parents couldn't, someone who listened to her frustrations about school, about feeling ordinary, about wanting something more. Investigators would later recover fragments of these conversations from deleted social media accounts and encrypted messaging apps. The person on the other end used multiple names, multiple profiles, always careful never to reveal too much. The messages started innocent, friendly, supportive. How was your day? Your parents don't understand you because they're from a different generation. You're more mature than the kids at your school. Classic grooming tactics. Experts would later confirm. Building trust. Creating emotional dependency. Isolating the target from their support system. By January 2019, the conversations had evolved. Have you ever thought about traveling? What if you could start over somewhere new? I know people who could help you. People who could give you opportunities. Sarah never told her parents about these conversations. She never told her friends. When her mother asked who she was texting all the time, Sarah said it was just classmates, group chats about homework. A lie, the first of many. On March 12, 2019, Sarah's junior class departed for a 3-day educational trip to Vancouver, British Columbia. It was an annual tradition at Roosevelt High School, a chance for students to experience a different culture, practice their French, visit museums and historical sites. 28 students. For chaperones, 3 days, 200 miles from home. Sarah's parents signed a permission slip without hesitation. Their daughter had been on school trips before. She had never given them a reason to worry. The night before she left, Sarah came downstairs and hugged her mother. Jennifer would later say it felt different, more intense, like Sarah was saying goodbye for longer than 3 days. But she dismissed the feeling, told herself she was being paranoid. The next morning, March 13th, Sarah boarded the bus at 6 a.m. She texted her mom a selfie with 2 friends, smiling, giving a thumbs up, "Love you. See you Sunday." It was the last message Jennifer Mitchell would receive from her daughter for 6 years. The bus crossed the U.S.-Canada border at 11:30 a.m. on March 13th. Standard procedure. The students handed over their passports. Border agents checked them briefly, waved the group through. Sarah Mitchell's passport was scanned. Her photo matched her face. Everything appeared normal. The group arrived at the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Vancouver at 2:15 p.m. Students were assigned rooms in pairs. Sarah's roommate was a girl named Madison Porter, someone she was friendly with but not particularly close to. The first day went according to schedule. Museum visits, guided tour of historical sites, dinner at a restaurant in Gastown. Sarah participated, smiled in group photos, gave no indication that anything was wrong. But that evening, back at the hotel, Sarah told Madison she was going down the lobby to get a soda from the vending machine. Security footage shows Sarah exiting the elevator, wearing jeans and a Roosevelt High School hoodie. She walks through the lobby, glances at her phone, and heads toward the main entrance. The camera captures her pushing through the revolving door and stepping onto the street. She turns right, heading west on West Georgia Street, and disappears from frame. That's the last confirmed sighting of Sarah Mitchell. Madison assumed Sarah would return in a few minutes. When 15 minutes passed, she texted, "Where are you?" No response. After 30 minutes, Madison went to the lobby herself. No Sarah. She checked the vending machines, the bathroom, the hotel restaurant. Nothing. Madison returned to the room, thinking maybe Sarah had come back through a different entrance. But the room was empty. Sarah's suitcase was still there, her toiletries in the bathroom, her jacket on the bed. Her phone charger was plugged into the wall, but her phone was gone. At 11 p.m., Madison knocked on the door of Mrs. Campbell, one of the chaperones. I haven't seen Sarah since she went to get a soda. That was over an hour ago. Mrs. Campbell, try not to panic, called the other chaperones. They split up and searched the hotel, lobby, restaurant, pool, fitness center, conference rooms. Sarah Mitchell was nowhere. At 11:43 p.m., Mrs. Campbell called the Vancouver Police Department. A missing teenager. American citizen. Last seen leaving the hotel alone. Officers arrived within 15 minutes. They reviewed security footage, interviewed the front desk staff, checked to see if Sarah had taken a taxi or Uber. Nothing. No credit card usage. No ride-sharing requests. No phone signal. By 2 a.m., Sarah's parents received the call every parent dreads. I remember Jennifer answering the phone. I remember watching her face change. She couldn't speak. She just handed me the phone and started crying. The school principal explained what had happened. Sarah had left the hotel. She hadn't returned. Police were searching. Robert and Jennifer Mitchell were on a plane to Vancouver by 6 a.m. By the time they landed, the story had hit local news. Missing American teenager. School trip gone wrong. Hotels and businesses along West Georgia Street were being canvassed for information. But Sarah had vanished as completely as if she'd never existed. The Vancouver police reviewed hundreds of hours of security footage from surrounding businesses, traffic cameras, ATM cameras. Nothing showed Sarah after she turned right outside the Fairmont. How does a 16-year-old girl disappear in the middle of a busy city without a single additional camera catching her image? That question haunted investigators. The FBI joined the case on March 16th, treating it as a possible abduction. They analyzed Sarah's phone records, her social media accounts, her laptop that had been left at home. That's when they found the deleted messages. Thousands of messages between Sarah and an account that used the name Marcus Chun. The profile picture showed a young man, early 20s, attractive, casual photos in various locations. Reverse image search revealed the photos were stolen from an Instagram model in Australia. Marcus Chin didn't exist. The messages revealed the grooming process in devastating detail. Months of conversation, emotional manipulation, promises of a better life, suggestions to meet in person. And then, buried in the recovered data, investigators found something that made their blood run cold. A message sent 2 days before the school trip. Vancouver is perfect. Easy to cross borders. I'll have everything ready. Trust me. Sarah's response. I'm scared. I know, but this is your chance. You said you wanted to escape, to be someone different. I can give you that. What if my parents try to find me? By the time they realize you're gone, you'll already be someone else. New name, new documents, new life. Isn't that what you wanted? Sarah Mitchell hadn't been abducted. She had walked willingly into the night, believing she was meeting someone who would help her start over. Someone who had spent months preparing her for that exact moment. Someone who had resources, connections, and a plan that extended far beyond Vancouver. The revelation that Sarah had been groomed online shifted the entire investigation. This wasn't a random abduction. It was a calculated operation. The FBI assembled a task force specializing in human trafficking and online exploitation. They traced the Marcus Chun account through VPNs, encrypted servers, and proxy networks that bounce across 7 countries. Every lead hit a dead end. Whoever was behind the account knew exactly how to cover their tracks. Meanwhile, Sarah's parents faced a nightmare no family should endure. The media coverage was relentless. Some outlets portrayed Sarah as a victim. Others suggested she was a troubled runaway who had made her own choices. Online commenters were even harsher. She's 16, not 6. She knew what she was doing. Bad parenting. They should have monitored her phone. She probably just wanted attention, and now she's hiding somewhere embarrassed. Jennifer Mitchell stopped reading the comments, stopped watching the news. She created a routine that kept her functional. Wake up, call Sarah's phone, leave a voicemail, go to work, come home, sit in Sarah's room. Repeat. Robert threw himself into the investigation. He created spreadsheets tracking every possible lead. He joined online forums dedicated to missing persons cases. He learned about human trafficking routes, document forgers, underground networks that move people across borders. He became obsessed with the belief that Sarah was still alive somewhere, waiting to be found. The FBI's investigation revealed disturbing patterns. The Marcus Chen account had communicated with at least 15 other teenage girls across North America. Most had blocked the account when the conversations became suspicious. 2 others had agreed to meet in person, but backed out at the last minute. Sarah was the only one who had gone through with it. But what happened after she left the hotel remained a mystery. Investigators theorized several scenarios. Theory 1. Sarah was taken across the border immediately, possibly hidden in a vehicle with false compartments, transported south into the United States before anyone realized she was missing. Theory 2. She was moved by boat. Vancouver's harbor provided countless opportunities for maritime smuggling. Theory 3. She was kept in Vancouver for weeks or months, held in a safe house while her appearance was altered and documents were forged, then moved once the initial media attention died down. All 3 theories assumed Sarah was being trafficked, that she had been lured with false promises and was now trapped in a criminal network. But there was a 4th possibility, one that investigators whispered about but couldn't prove. What if Sarah really had wanted to disappear? What if she had sought out these connections intentionally, looking for a way to erase her old life and become someone new? The deleted messages suggested ambiguity. Yes, she expressed fear, but she also expressed excitement, anticipation, a sense that she was taking control of her life. Child psychologists brought in to analyze the messages said it wasn't that simple. Dr. Patricia Vaughn, reenactment, psychologists, grooming victims often believe they're making their own choices. That's the entire point of the manipulation. By the time they take action, they've been so thoroughly conditioned that they can't distinguish between their own desires and the desires planted by their abuser. Sarah thought she wanted to disappear, but that want was manufactured. As weeks became months, the media attention faded. Search efforts scaled back. The FBI continued investigating, but resources were diverted to newer cases. By September 2019, 6 months after Sarah vanished, the case was effectively cold. Her parents refused to give up. They hired private investigators. They posted flyers in cities across North America. They appeared on true crime podcasts, morning talk shows, anywhere that would give them a platform. Jennifer, news interview, reenactment. Someone knows where my daughter is. Someone saw something. Someone helped move her. We're offering a $100,000 reward for information that leads to finding Sarah. Please, if you know anything, come forward. The tips came in by the hundreds. Sarah had been spotted in Seattle, in Los Angeles, in Toronto, in Mexico City. Every tip was investigated. Every sighting checked. All were dead ends. Years passed. Sarah's bedroom remained untouched, a shrine to a girl frozen in time. Her parents aged visibly, the stress etching lines into their faces. Birthdays came and went, marked only by tears and unanswered prayers. March 15th, 2020. 1 year missing. March 15th, 2021. 2 years missing. March 15th, 2022. 3 years missing. With each passing year, the likelihood of finding Sarah alive diminished. Statistics on missing teenagers were grim. The longer they stayed gone, the less likely they were to return. But Robert Mitchell refused to accept those statistics. He expanded his search internationally. He connected with organizations that fought human trafficking in Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, South America. He learned about the routes trafficked women were forced to travel, the cities where they disappeared into underground economies. And then, in early 2025, he received a message that would change everything. An email from an organization called the Coalition for Missing Persons in Latin America. They had been working with authorities in Mexico to identify women living without documentation, many of whom showed signs of trafficking or memory alteration. They had found someone who matched Sarah's description, a woman in her early 20s, working in a textile factory in Leon, Mexico. No identification, no memory of her life before 2019. Spoke English with an American accent, but claimed to be Mexican. Robert's hands shook as he read the message. It could be anyone. Thousands of women matched that description. But something in his gut told him this was different. He forwarded the information to the FBI. Within 48 hours, agents were coordinating with Mexican authorities. On August 14, 2025, 6 years and 5 months after Sarah Mitchell disappeared, Mexican immigration officers entered the textile factory in Leon. They were looking for a woman named Elena Vasquez. What they found would unravel a conspiracy far larger than anyone had imagined. Before we continue, I want to know, are you still watching? Drop a comment telling me what state you're from. Let's see how far the story has reached. And if you're invested in finding out what happened next, hit that like button. It helps more people discover stories like this. The factory was exactly what you'd expect. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights, rows of sewing machines operated by women who worked 12-hour shifts for wages that barely covered food and rent. Among them was a woman who called herself Elena Vasquez. According to her co-workers, Elena was quiet, kept to herself, never talked about her family or her past. She arrived at work on time, did her job efficiently, and left without socializing. She lived in a shared apartment with 3 other factory workers. She sent money every month to an address in Guadalajara, though no one knew who received it. She had no identification, no bank account, no digital footprint. She existed, but barely. When Mexican immigration officers approached her on the factory floor, Elena didn't run. She simply stood up from her sewing machine, nodded, and followed them outside. In the immigration office, they asked her standard questions. What is your full name? Elena Maria Vasquez. Where were you born? Guadalajara, Jalisco. Do you have any identification? No. I lost everything in a fire. 4 years ago. The story was rehearsed, delivered without emotion. Officials had heard similar stories countless times from undocumented workers trying to avoid deportation. But then they showed her photograph. Sarah Mitchell, age 16, school photo from Roosevelt High School. Elena stared at the image for a long moment. Her expression didn't change, but her hands started to shake. Do you recognize this girl? No. Are you sure? Look closely. Elena pushed the photo back across the table. I don't know her. But her voice wavered, just slightly, enough for the officers to notice. They showed her another photo. The Mitchell family, Robert, Jennifer, and Sarah, taken on Christmas morning 2018. Elena's breathing quickened. She gripped the edge of the table. This is your family. Your real family. Your name is Sarah Mitchell. You disappeared from Vancouver in March 2019. Elena shook her head violently. No, my name is Elena. I'm Mexican. I was born in Guadalajara. I don't know these people. But tears were streaming down her face. The officers called in a psychologist who specialized in trauma and memory suppression. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez sat across from Elena and spoke softly in Spanish, then English, watching for signs of recognition, for cracks in constructed identity. Dr. Rodriguez, reenactment. Elena, I need you to think very carefully. What is your earliest memory? Elena closed her eyes. I remember waking up in a hospital. Someone told me I'd been in an accident, that I'd hit my head. That's why I couldn't remember anything before. When was this? 2019. Spring, I think. March or April. Where was the hospital? Elena's face contorted with effort. I don't remember. Somewhere near the border. Someone came to get me. A woman. She said she was my aunt. She said my parents were dead, and I was going to live with her. What happened after that? We traveled. Different cities. She kept saying we had to keep moving, because immigration was looking for me. She got me papers. Elena Vasquez. She said it was my real name, but I'd been using a fake name before. The psychologist leaned forward. Did this woman hurt you? No. She was kind, but strict. She said I had to work, had to send money back to the family. That's how we survive. So I did. I worked in factories, cleaned houses, whatever I could find. Do you remember this woman's name? Elena shook her head. She said to call her Tia Maria, but I don't think that was her real name. Over the next 3 hours, Dr. Rodriguez carefully reconstructed Elena's fragmented memories. The story that emerged was chilling. After leaving the Fairmont Hotel in Vancouver, Sarah had met someone, a woman, possibly mid-30s, who had been waiting in a car on West Georgia Street. Sarah got in willingly, believing this woman was connected to Marcus Chun, the person she'd been messaging online. The woman drove south immediately, crossing back into the United States through a commercial freight crossing where border agents were less thorough with passenger vehicles accompanying trucks. They reached a safe house in Bellingham, Washington, less than 2 hours from Vancouver. There, Sarah's appearance was altered. Her long blonde hair was cut short and dyed dark brown. She was given contact lenses to change her eye color from blue to brown. Her clothing was replaced with items that looked worn, secondhand, nothing traceable. And then came the drugs. Dr. Rodriguez, reenactment, Sarah, when you were in that house, did they give you anything? Pills? Injections? Elena's face went pale. They said it was medicine, for anxiety, to help me adjust. They said starting a new life was stressful, and this would make it easier. How often did you take this medicine? Every day. For weeks. Maybe months. Time got confused. What Sarah didn't know was that she was being given a combination of benzodiazepines and dissociative drugs, substances that impair memory formation and create a state of suggestibility. Over the course of weeks, while Sarah's parents were appearing on television begging for her return, their daughter was being systematically erased. The people holding her fed her a new history. She was Elena Vasquez, born in Guadalajara, orphaned young, raised by an aunt who could barely afford to feed her, desperate for work, willing to cross borders illegally for a chance at survival. They showed her fake documents, fake photographs, told her the same story over and over until it became her reality. By the time the drugs were reduced, Sarah Mitchell was gone. Elena Vasquez believed she had always existed. The woman who had orchestrated this, Tia Maria, moved Elena south to a network of safe houses. Washington, Oregon, California, eventually crossing into Mexico through Tijuana. Elena was put to work. Factories, cleaning services, agricultural fields. The money she earned was collected by handlers who claimed to be sending it back to family in Guadalajara. In reality, there was no family. The money was going into the pockets of a trafficking organization that specialized in document fraud and labor exploitation. Elena worked for 6 years, never questioning her identity, never realizing she had a family in Washington desperately searching for her, until Mexican immigration officers showed her that photograph. The human mind is remarkable in its ability to protect itself from trauma. When reality becomes too painful, too incomprehensible, the mind creates alternative narratives. But somewhere deep in Elena's subconscious, Sarah Mitchell still existed, and seeing her own face in that school photo cracked the carefully constructed walls. Dr. Rodriguez recommended Elena be taken to a specialized medical facility where experts in trafficking and memory suppression could help her process what was happening. But first, they needed to confirm her identity beyond doubt. Fingerprints were taken and run through international databases. The match came back within hours. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, missing since March 15, 2019. Case file, FBI 2019 VAC 0847. The FBI was notified immediately. So were Robert and Jennifer Mitchell. After 6 years of searching, 6 years of hope fading a little more each day, they received a phone call that seemed impossible. "We've found your daughter. She's alive." Robert and Jennifer Mitchell were on a plane to Mexico City within 8 hours of receiving the call. The FBI advised them to prepare for the possibility that Sarah wouldn't recognize them, that the reunion might be difficult, traumatic even. Nothing could have prepared them for the reality. Sarah, still calling herself Elena, was being held in a medical facility under supervision. She was physically healthy but psychologically fragile, her mind caught between two identities, two histories, two completely different lives. When her parents walked into the room, she looked at them like strangers. Jennifer, interview, reenactment. I wanted to run to her, to hold her, but the doctors warned us not to overwhelm her. So we just stood there. Robert was crying. I was crying, and Sarah, our daughter, she just stared at us with no recognition at all. Robert approached slowly, holding out the photo they brought, Sarah's junior year school picture, the same one that had been plastered on missing person posters for 6 years. Robert, reenactment. I said, "Sarah, this is you. This is who you were before." And she took the photo and looked at it for so long. Then she said, "That girl looks happy. I don't remember being happy." The deprogramming process would take months. Sarah was transferred to a specialized facility in California that worked with trafficking survivors and individuals who had experienced severe psychological trauma. Slowly, carefully, therapists helped her access buried memories. The process was excruciating. Every recovered memory came with pain, confusion, guilt. Sarah remembered her bedroom, her school, her friends. But those memories felt like they belonged to someone else, a ghost from another life. She remembered the messages with Marcus Chun, remembered feeling trapped in her ordinary life, desperate for something more, something bigger. And she remembered the crushing realization, weeks into being held in that safe house, that she had made a terrible mistake. Sarah, interview reenactment. I wanted to go home. I asked them to take me back. They said it was too late, that I'd already crossed too many lines, that if I went back I'd get in trouble for running away. They said my parents probably didn't even want me anymore, and I believed them. I was so confused and scared. I just believed everything they told me. The drugs had done their job. By the time Sarah's head cleared enough to really understand what had happened, Elena Vasquez was already taking root. FBI investigators worked to trace the network that had taken her. Marcus Chun was eventually identified as part of a larger online grooming operation run by a trafficking ring based in Tijuana. The operation used social media and gaming platforms to target vulnerable teenagers across North America, particularly girls who showed signs of depression, isolation, or family conflict. The recruiters built relationships over months, sometimes years, before suggesting meetings or offering help starting over somewhere new. Once the teenagers agreed, they were moved through an established pipeline, appearance altered, identity erased, documents forged, then put to work in various industries, their labor generating profit for the organization, while they remained completely disconnected from their past lives. Sarah was one of dozens. The woman known as Tia Maria was identified as Gabriela Ortiz, a 41-year-old American citizen who had been working with the trafficking organization for over a decade. She specialized in resettlement, the process of taking newly acquired victims and transforming them into compliant workers. Ortiz was arrested in Guadalajara in October 2025. During interrogation, she showed no remorse. Ortiz, interrogation, reenactment. These girls wanted to leave. They contacted us. They asked for help starting over. We gave them what they wanted. New lives, new identities. Is it our fault they didn't like the reality of those new lives? The FBI dismantled the network over the following year. 17 members were arrested across 3 countries. But the investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Sarah Mitchell wasn't the only missing teenager who had been transformed into someone else. Authorities identified 12 other young women living under false identities in Mexico, Central America, and South America. Women who had disappeared years earlier from schools, malls, bus stops across the United States and Canada. Women who had become ghosts. Each one had been groomed online. Each one had left willingly, believing they were meeting someone who offered escape, adventure, a fresh start. Each one had been systematically erased and rebuilt as someone new. The youngest had been missing for 3 years. The oldest, 9. One of them was only 14 when she disappeared. The recovery process varied for each victim. Some regained their memories relatively quickly once removed from the controlled environment. Others struggled for years, their minds unable to reconcile 2 competing identities. Sarah fell somewhere in the middle. By December 2025, 9 months after being found, she had recovered most of her memories of her life before March 2019. She recognized her parents, her house, her school. She could tell you about her childhood, her friends, what she wanted to be when she grew up. But Elena Vasquez didn't disappear completely. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, trauma specialist. Reenactment. What people don't understand is that Sarah didn't just lose 6 years of her life. She lived 6 years as someone else. Elena has memories, experiences, relationships that are just as real to Sarah as her childhood memories. You can't just delete one identity to restore another. Sarah has to integrate both, has to find a way to be a whole person who contains both experiences. The media frenzy around Sarah's recovery was intense. Her story became international news. The photos of her reunion with her parents went viral. Documentaries were proposed. Book deals offered. But Sarah's parents refused all of it. They wanted privacy. They wanted their daughter to heal away from cameras and microphones. Sarah's reintegration into normal life was anything but smooth. She was 22 years old, but had the legal identity of a 16-year-old. She had missed high school graduation, prom, first jobs, college applications, all the milestones that define the transition to adulthood. Her friends from Roosevelt High School had moved on. They were finishing college, starting careers, building adult lives. The shared experiences that bonded teenage friendships no longer existed. Sarah was caught between two worlds, fully belonging to neither. She enrolled in community college in spring 2026, trying to complete her education. But sitting in classrooms with 18-year-olds felt wrong. She was older, had experienced things they couldn't comprehend, carried trauma they'd never understand. After one semester, she dropped out. Sarah, therapy session, reenactment. Everyone expects me to just pick up where I left off, like I'm still 16 inside. But I'm not. I lived a whole other life. I worked in factories. I survived on my own. I can't go back to being a high school student worried about grades and what to wear to parties. That person doesn't exist anymore. The psychological toll extended beyond Sarah. Her parents struggled with guilt, questioning every decision they'd made in the months before her disappearance. Should they have monitored her phone more closely? Should they have noticed the warning signs? Should they have said no to the Vancouver trip? Jennifer interview, reenactment. For 6 years, I prayed for Sarah to come home. I promised God I would do anything, give anything, if she could just be alive. And then she came home, and I realized bringing her back physically was only the first step. The real work, the real fight, was helping her find herself again. And I didn't know if I was strong enough for that. Family therapy became a regular part of their lives. Learning to communicate across the gap of 6 lost years. Learning to accept that the daughter who came back was fundamentally different from the daughter who left. But slowly, painfully, they built something new. Not the family they used to be, but a family nonetheless. By mid-2026, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone. She wanted to meet the other, recovered victims. The FBI arranged a group session at the California facility where Sarah had received treatment. 8 young women, ages 17 to 24, all trafficking survivors, all struggling to reconcile false identities with their true selves. Sarah, interview, reenactment. Walking into that room was the first time in a year that I felt like I wasn't alone. These women understood. They knew what it was like to wake up every day not sure which name to answer to, which memories were real, which history belonged to them. We didn't have to explain. We just knew. The group met monthly. They shared their experiences, their struggles, their small victories. They celebrated when one of them got a job, enrolled in school, reconnected with family. They supported each other through the bad days, the flashbacks, the moments when the past threatened to overwhelm the present. They called themselves the Found, a reminder that being found was just the beginning. The real journey was finding themselves. Sarah started speaking publicly about her experience in early 2027, 2 years after her recovery, not to media outlets or true crime shows, but to schools, community groups, organizations working to prevent trafficking and online exploitation. Her message was clear. This can happen to anyone. Sarah, speaking engagement, reenactment, I wasn't a runaway from a broken home. I wasn't abused or neglected. I had loving parents, a safe house, good schools. But I was lonely. I felt ordinary. And someone online made me feel special, understood, important. They offered me adventure. They offered me an escape from boring suburban life. And I took it because I was 16 and thought I knew everything, and I didn't understand that the person on the other end of those messages was a predator who saw me as a commodity. Her talks resonated, particularly with parents who suddenly saw their own teenagers reflected in Sarah's story. The quiet kid spending hours online. The good student whose grades were slipping. The daughter who seemed distant, preoccupied, living in a world her parents couldn't access. Warning signs they might have dismissed as typical teenage behavior. Sarah's advocacy work gave her purpose, a way to transform her trauma into something meaningful. She partnered with the FBI to develop educational materials about online grooming. She consulted with tech companies about platform safety features. She testified before Congress about the need for stronger protections for minors online. But the question that haunted her, that she addressed in every speech, was the one everyone wondered but few asked directly. Do you regret it? If you could go back to March 15th, 2019, knowing everything you know now, would you still get in that car? Sarah, interview, reenactment. People want a simple answer. They want me to say, of course I regret it. It was the worst mistake of my life. And yes, I regret the pain I caused my parents. I regret the 6 years I lost. I regret the trauma that will probably follow me forever. But that 16-year-old girl who wanted to escape her ordinary life, she was real. Her feelings were real. And pretending those feelings weren't valid, that she was just stupid or naive, that's how we miss the warning signs in other kids. We have to understand why teenagers are vulnerable to this kind of manipulation, not just condemn them for falling for it. As of 2026, Sarah Mitchell is 24 years old. She lives in Portland, Oregon, sharing an apartment with one of the other recovered victims from Found. She works part-time at a nonprofit that provides resources to trafficking survivors. She's taking online classes toward a degree in social work. She talks to her parents every Sunday. She still has nightmares, still struggles with anxiety, still has days when she's not sure which name feels more real. But she's building a life, a real life, her own life. The trafficking network that took her has been dismantled, but others exist. The FBI estimates that hundreds of American teenagers are currently living under false identities, having been groomed online and moved through similar pipelines. Some will be found. Many won't. The technology that enabled Sarah's grooming has only become more sophisticated. Encrypted messaging apps, anonymous social media platforms, AI-generated profiles that seem impossibly real. Predators have more tools than ever to find vulnerable targets. But awareness has grown too. Schools now teach digital literacy and online safety. Parents monitor their children's devices more carefully. Social media companies have implemented better reporting systems. Sarah's story, and the stories of the other recovered victims, have sparked a national conversation about how we protect our children in an increasingly digital world. But perhaps the most important takeaway from Sarah Mitchell's story isn't about technology or trafficking networks or border security. It's about identity, who we are, how we become ourselves, how fragile that sense of self really is. Sarah spent 6 years believing she was someone else, not because she was brainwashed in some dramatic movie sense, but because she was given a new story about herself, and her mind, desperate for coherence, accepted it. She became Elena Vasquez because being Elena was easier than holding on to the fragments of Sarah that remained. And when she was finally told the truth, that Sarah Mitchell was her real identity, she didn't feel relief. She felt loss. Because Elena, despite being constructed from lies, had been real to her. Sarah, final interview, reenactment. I think people expect me to hate Elena, to see those 6 years as time stolen from me. And they were stolen, but they also happened. I lived them. Elena survived things Sarah never could have. And in some weird way, I'm grateful for that strength, even if I hate how I got it. I'm not just Sarah anymore. I'm not just Elena. I'm both. I'm someone new, someone who contains all of it, and I'm still figuring out who that person is. On March 15th, 2027, 8 years after she disappeared and 2 years after she was found, Sarah Mitchell returned to Vancouver, not to the Fairmont Hotel, not to retrace her steps through trauma, but to stand on the seawall at sunset, looking out at the ocean, and finally, truly, say goodbye to the girl who walked out of that hotel believing she was walking toward freedom. Because freedom, she learned, isn't about escaping yourself. It's about accepting yourself. All of yourself. Even the parts you wish didn't exist. Sarah of voiceover, I was lost. Then I was found. Now I'm just trying to find myself. And maybe that's all any of us can do. Sarah Mitchell's story raises questions that don't have easy answers. How do we protect teenagers from online predators without suffocating their independence? How do we teach them to recognize manipulation without making them afraid of the world? How do we help trafficking survivors reclaim their identities without erasing the survival skills they developed? What's your take on this? I want to know what you think. Drop a comment below. Tell me, were there warning signs Sarah's parents should have caught? Or is it unfair to blame them? Should Sarah have faced consequences for leaving willingly, even though she was groomed? And how do we prevent this from happening to the next vulnerable teenager? I'm reading every comment. Let's have a real conversation about this. If this story affected you, if it made you think about online safety differently, if it made you want to have a conversation with the teenagers in your life, hit that like button and share this video. And if you want to dive deeper into cases like this, cases that challenge everything you think you know about crime, justice, and human psychology, check out our next video. Trust me, it's going to make you question everything. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Hit that notification bell, because these stories, they need to be told, and you need to hear them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.